Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we are diving headfirst into America's haunted case files. As fellow investigators, there's literally nothing more fascinating than taking a hard, structured look at documented phenomena. We're talking real eyewitness reports, inexplicable visual anomalies, and those deep-seated legends that just seem to cling to the darkest corners of this country. So let's get our facts straight and prepare to examine the evidence together.
But before we really get into it, I want you to stop and ask yourself something. What ghoulishness is waiting for you in your own neck of the woods? We so often write these phenomena off as distant, fictional stories, stuff reserved for late-night movies, right? But the truth is, the most haunted places in America are situated directly among us. Many of these spine-tingling sites operate right now as functioning hotels, historic landmarks, everyday vacation spots. The point is, the unexplained might literally be lurking right in your own backyard.
All right, let's do this. Grab your EMF reader, maybe grab some salt just in case, because we are officially opening the case files. Our objective for this explainer is a full cross-country investigation. We're going to impartially review specific historical legends and the terrifyingly consistent eyewitness reports that always seem to follow them. We aren't here to rely on campfire rumors. We are here to look at the documented reports of shadow figures, phantom voices, and environmental anomalies.
Case file number 1. Residential spirits.
We're kicking things off with what I like to call the intimate haunts. These are places where entities seem permanently bound to their domestic spaces, just kind of lingering in the very bedrooms and hallways where they lived and ultimately died. Today, our focus centers on two deeply active 19th century properties, the Whaley House out in San Diego and the McIntyre Villa in Kansas. To really understand the phenomena happening here, we have to look at the historical foundation. We're talking deep, personal tragedies that left absolutely indelible marks on the environment.
Just look at the sheer variety of multisensory evidence coming out of the McIntyre Villa. It's honestly staggering. Investigators there aren't just feeling a creepy vibe, they are documenting visceral, in-your-face encounters. We're talking about unexplainable, drastic temperature drops, the sudden, unmistakable whiff of a powdery women's perfume, and crystal clear, disembodied voices of past inhabitants. And visually, the reports consistently mention lights flickering on and off on command, and the distinct, looming shapes of shadowy figures just watching from the windows. It's incredibly physical.
And the invasive nature of these residential haunts, it is undeniable. Down in Savannah, Georgia, at the Keogh House, which, by the way, used to be a funeral parlor, the reports get even more terrifying. Guests claim they've literally been awoken to gentle caresses in the middle of the night. Even more alarming than that, they've witnessed ghostly mourners standing directly over their beds, just staring down at them as if they were lying in a coffin. I mean, wow. This isn't just a shadow darting down a hall. This is an interactive, deeply personal manifestation.
To truly understand residential haunts, we always have to anchor the activity back in reality. Let's jump back to San Diego's Whaley House, which is very often dubbed America's most haunted house. Guests there frequently report hearing phantom footsteps, cries, and giggles echoing through the rooms. The legend behind this specific auditory phenomena, it traces directly back to a little boy named Thomas Whaley, a child of the family who tragically died right there in the home from scarlet fever. It's a perfect example of how the documented history directly mirrors the evidence we find today.
Moving on to case file number 2. Cursed grounds.
So we are taking this investigation out of the domestic sphere and heading out into the wild. We're exploring sprawling outdoor sites now. We'll be looking at two vastly different, yet equally corrupted locations, Glenwood Cemetery in Mississippi, which is completely steeped in local folklore, and Bachelor's Grove Cemetery in Chicago, famously used as a dumping ground by 1920s organized crime.
Up at Bachelor's Grove, the documented anomalies operate on a massive, almost cinematic scale. Visitors report absolutely terrifying near collisions with phantom vehicles that, poof, simply aren't there a second later. Under the full moon, eyewitnesses have actually documented a spirit walking the grounds holding her baby. But the most bizarre report by far? A phantom farmhouse that visually manifests in the distance, but as you approach it, it actually shrinks before disappearing entirely. It's wild, and it shows us just how much outdoor phenomena can completely defy the laws of physics.
Now, when investigating a localized curse, you're always looking for lore that perfectly aligns with documented destruction. The legend of the Yazoo Witch down at Glenwood Cemetery hits the nail on the head. The story goes that a woman who tortured local fishermen sank into quicksand, but right before she went under, she vowed to burn the town down in exactly 20 years. Well, sure enough, 20 years passed and a massive fire destroyed 200 buildings in Yazoo City. Today, the chains placed around her grave are continually found broken, no matter how many times the groundskeeper goes out there to repair them.
Which brings us to our climax. Case file number 3, Institutional Echoes.
This is our final and, quite honestly, most intense category. Massive, overwhelming buildings where collective trauma has essentially saturated the walls. It is absolutely vital for us as investigators to understand this difference in scale. While those residential haunts deal with intimate family tragedies, institutional haunts operate on an entirely different level. These are places built for mass incarceration or massive illness that saw thousands upon thousands of deaths. The result is often this chaotic, overwhelming auditory and physical phenomena that completely envelops you the second you step inside.
A prime, textbook example of this is the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio, just an imposing, Gothic, former prison with a notoriously violent history. It officially closed its doors back in 1990, but investigators and visitors regularly report that it is far from empty. The sheer psychic weight of a facility like this creates an environment that is just ripe for intense spectral evidence.
Naturally, the most terrifying documented reports come from the darkest corner of the prison, the solitary confinement wing. And guys, this isn't subtle activity. Investigators report hearing piercing shrieks and the heavy, metallic sound of cell doors violently slamming shut entirely on their own. Visually, looming, shadowy figures are a constant occurrence down there. But the most chilling detail? People have reported physically feeling the phantom club of a murdered guard who is apparently still on patrol. It really highlights the aggressive, intensely physical nature of institutional phenomena.
We see a very similar intensity over at Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. Sitting up on this wind-swept hill, this sprawling hospital was built back in 1910 to house those suffering from the highly contagious and, at the time, totally incurable white plague of tuberculosis. With absolutely no cure available, contracting the disease here very often proved fatal, embedding an unimaginable layer of sorrow deep into the building's foundation.
As investigators, the crucial point for us is always the data, right? We'll consider this number, 152. That is the number of tragic deaths that occurred at Waverly Hills in 1945 alone, which was the absolute worst year of the epidemic there. When visitors today report hearing slamming doors, heavy footsteps, and the agonizing screams of patients echoing from empty rooms, it's impossible not to connect that overwhelming auditory phenomena back to the documented, historical despair of the thousands who ultimately perished in those halls.
But, institutional haunts aren't just strictly prisons and hospitals. They can be historic hotels too. Take the Hotel Monte Vista out in Flagstaff, Arizona. In room 210, there's a young phantom bellboy in a red coat with brass buttons who is known to actively knock on the door, yelp, room service, and then just vanish without a trace. It provides a really startling shift in tone for us, proving that these massive institutions can also harbor surprisingly interactive, almost playful echoes of their daily operations.
All right, let's get to the final verdict. We've stepped back today and impartially reviewed the evidence from all across the country, from intimate residential spirits to corrupted cursed grounds to overwhelming institutional echoes. The documentation is definitely there, the legends clearly align with the history, and the eyewitness reports remain remarkably consistent. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought for your own investigations. Are these phenomena mere echoes of history, like a tape recording playing back on the environment, or is something truly, consciously waiting for you in the dark? Stay curious, stay vigilant. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you on the next investigation.